Hello everybody and welcome. My name is The Shy Hat and it is December 23rd, 2023. It is Saturday and thank you very much for coming by on Saturday to watch this guided walkthrough for the TryHackMe Advent of Cyber event. It is day 23 out of day 24, so we're almost to the finish line. If anybody wants to participate in the Advent of Cyber event, you can do so with the following link that I'm leaving in the chat right now. This page and all the challenges for the event are going to be available after Christmas as well, so you don't have to feel like you have to rush to get to solving these challenges, because they'll be around for quite a while. But anyways, let's get started with today's task. Alright, so today's task is day 23, coerced authentication, relay all the way. The first thing we need to do when we're starting our challenge is we need to click on this Start Machine button over here. So go ahead and click on that, and then we also need to use our attack box VM today to interact with the vulnerable server. So we're going to need to go up to the top of the web page and click on this blue Start Attack Box button right here. So we're going to give that a click, and that's going to split the browser tab into two panes, with the left-hand pane having the TryHackMe webpage, and the right-hand pane having the attack box virtual machine. So we're going to need to wait for a little bit for the virtual machine to start up. But while we're waiting, we can go up to the top of this task and we can read about what we're going to be learning today. Okay, so McSkitty is unable to authenticate to our server. It seems that McReady has struck again and changed the password. We know that it's him because Log McBlue confirmed in the logs that there were authentication attempts from his laptop. Online brute force attacks don't seem to be working, so it's time to get creative. We know that the server has a network file share, so if we can trick McReady, perhaps we can get him to disclose the new password to us. Let's get to work. Alright, so what are we learning in today's challenge? We're going to be learning the basics of network file shares. We're going to be learning understanding NTLM authentication, how NTLM authentication coercion attacks work, how Responder works for authentication coercion attacks, and lastly we're going to learn about forcing authentication coercion using LNK files. Okay, the next section over here has information about how to connect to the vulnerable machine for today's challenge, but we have already started our process for that, so we don't need to worry about that. So let's take a look at this introduction here. In today's task, we will look at NTLM authentication and how threat actors can perform authentication coercion attacks. By coercing authentication, attackers can uncover sensitive information that can be used to gain access to pretty critical stuff. Let's dive in. Okay, so before we move on, we see that our attack box virtual machine has finished initializing here. We're going to click into this terminal window and press enter to close the window, and we're going to put the attack box virtual machine into its own browser tab, and we can do so by clicking on this button right here, which is view in full screen. So we can click on that, and then the attack box VM is going to be put into its own browser tab, which is good for us since we need to look. But since the screen real estate is kind of at a premium over here, so we're going to go back to our TryHackMe webpage, and then this window pane over here, we're going to close it with this button right here, which is labeled Exit Split View. Okay, so click on that, and then we can get the full page view of our webpage again. Okay, so let's move on. Sharing is caring. We tend to think of computers as isolated devices. This may be true to an extent, but the real power of computing comes into play when we connect to networks. This is where we can start to share resources in order to achieve some pretty awesome things. In corporate environments, networks and network-based resources are used frequently. For example, in a network, there's no need for every user to have their own printer. Instead, the organization can buy a couple of large printers that all employees can share. This not only saves costs, but allows administrators to manage these systems more easily and centrally. Another example of this is file shares. Instead of each employee having local copies of files and needing to perform crazy version control when sharing files with other employees via old school methods like flash drives, the organization can deploy a network file share. Since the files are stored in a central location, it's easy to access them and ensure everyone has the latest version to hand. Administrators can add security to file shares to ensure that only authenticated users can access them. Additionally, access controls can be applied to ensure employees can only access specific folders and files based on their job role. However, it's these same file shares that can land an organization in hot water with red teamers. Usually, any employee has the ability to create a new network file share. Security controls are often not applied to these shares, allowing any authenticated user to access their contents. This can cause two issues. If a threat actor gains read access, they can look to exfiltrate sensitive information. In file shares of larger organizations, you can often find interesting things just lying around, such as credentials or sensitive customer documents. If the threat actor gains write access, they can alter information stored in the share, potentially overwriting critical files or staging other attacks, as we'll see in this task. Before we can perform any of these types of attacks, we first need to understand how authentication works for network file shares. So now we'll talk a little bit about NTLM authentication. In the Day 11 task, we learned about Active Directory and Kerberos authentication. File shares are often used on servers and workstations connected to an AD domain. This allows AD to take care of access management for the file share. Once connected, it's not only local users on the host who have access to the file share. All AD users with permissions will have access too. Similar to what we saw on Day 11, Kerberos authentication can be used to access these file shares. However, we'll be focusing on the other popular authentication protocol, NTLM or NTLM authentication. Before we dive into NTLM authentication, we should first talk about the server message block protocol. The SMB protocol allows clients, like workstations, to communicate with the server like a file share. In networks that use Microsoft AD, SMB governs everything from inter-network file sharing to remote administration. Even the out-of-paper alert your computer receives when you try to print a document is the work of the SMB protocol. However, the security of earlier versions of the SMB protocol were deemed insufficient. Several vulnerabilities and exploits were discovered that could be leveraged to recover credentials or even gain code execution on devices. Although some of these vulnerabilities were resolved in newer versions of the protocol, legacy systems don't support them, so organizations rarely enforce their use. NetNTLM, often referred to as Windows authentication or just NTLM authentication, allows the application to play the role of the middleman between the client and AD. NetNTLM is a very popular authentication protocol in Windows and is used for various different services, including SMB and RDP. It is used in AD environments as it allows servers, such as network file shares, to pass the buck to AD for authentication. Let's take a look at how it works in the animation below. Okay, so we see that the application user sends some, let's wait for this. Okay, so the application user requests access, and then the server sends a challenge, and then the client sends a response, and then the server sends a challenge to the DC, and then back and forth, and then finally the application user is able to get access. Okay, so when a user wants to authenticate to a server, the server responds with a challenge. The user can then encrypt the challenge using their password, not their actual password, but the hash derived from the password, to create a response that is sent back to the server. The server then passes both the challenge and the response to the domain controller. Since it knows the user's password hash, it can verify the response. If the response is correct, the domain controller can notify the server that the user has successfully authenticated and that the server can provide access. This prevents the application or server from having to store the user's credentials, which are now securely and exclusively stored on the domain controller. But here's the trick. If we can intercept these authentication requests and challenges, we can leverage them to gain unauthorized access. Let's dive a bit deeper. Responding to the race. There are usually lots of authentication requests and challenges flying around on the network. A popular tool that can be used to intercept them is Responder. Responder allows us to perform man-in-the-middle attacks by poisoning the responses during net NTLM authentication, tricking the client into talking to you instead of the actual server they want to connect to. On a real LAN, local area network, Responder will attempt to poison any link local multicast name resolution, NetBIOS name service, and web proxy auto discovery requests that are detected. On large Windows networks, these protocols allow hosts to perform their own local DNS resolution for all hosts on the same local network. Rather than overburdening network resources such as the DNS servers, first, hosts can attempt to determine if the host that they are looking for is on the same local network by sending out LMMNR requests and seeing if any hosts respond. The NBTNS is the precursor protocol to LLMNR, and WPAD requests are made to try to find a proxy for further HTTP connections. Since these protocols rely on requests broadcast in the local network, our rogue device running Responder would receive them too. They would usually just be dropped since they were not meant for our host. However, Responder will actively listen to the requests and send poisoned responses telling the requesting host that our IP is associated with the requested host name. By poisoning these requests, Responder attempts to force the client to connect to our attack box. In the same line, it starts to host several servers such as SMB, HTTP, SQL, and others to capture these requests and force authentication. If you want to dive a bit deeper into using Responder for these poisoning attacks, have a look at the breaching Active Directory room. This was an incredibly popular red teaming technique to perform when it was possible to gain access to an office belonging to the target corporation. Simply plugging in a rogue network device and listening to Responder for a couple of hours would yield several challenges that could be cracked offline or relayed. Then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden being in the office was no longer cool. Most employees connected from home using a VPN. While this was great for remote working, it meant intercepting net NTLM challenges was no longer really viable. Users connecting via VPN, which in most cases isn't considered part of the local network, made it borderline impossible to intercept and poison LLMNR requests in a timely manner using Responder. Now, we have to get a lot more creative. Cue in a little something called coercion. Unconventional coercion. If we can't just listen to and poison requests, we have to create our own. This brings a new attack vector into the spotlight, coercion. Instead of waiting for requests, we would coerce a system or service to authenticate us, allowing us to receive the challenge. Once we get this challenge, based on certain conditions, we can aim to perform two main attacks. If the password of the account coerced to authenticate is weak, we could crack the corresponding net NTLM challenge offline using tools such as Hashcat or John the Ripper. If the server or service's security configuration is insufficient, we could attempt to relay the challenge in order to impersonate the authenticating account. Two incredibly popular versions of coerced authentication are Print Spooler and Petit Potam. Print spooler is an attack that coerces the print spooler service on Windows hosts to authenticate to a host of your choosing. Petit potam is similar but leverages a different issue to coerce authentication. In these cases, it's the machine account, the actual server or computer, that performs the authentication. Normally, machine account passwords are random and change every 30 days, so there isn't really a good way for us to crack the challenge. However, often, we can relay this authentication attempt by coercing a very privileged server, such as a domain controller, and then relaying the authentication attempt. An attacker could compromise not just a single server, but all of AD. If you're interested in learning more about these coercion attacks, have a look at the Exploiting Active Directory room. Coercing the connectee. For this task, we will focus a bit more on coercing users into authenticating to us. Since users often have weak passwords, with this approach, we have a much higher chance of cracking one of the challenges and gaining access as the user. Users are now mostly connecting to file shares via VPN, so we can't simply run Responder and hope for the best. So the question remains, how can we coerce users to authenticate to something we control? Let's put it all together. If we have write access to the network file share that is used regularly, we can create a sneaky little file to coerce those users to authenticate to our server. We can do this by creating a file that, when viewed within the file browser, will coerce authentication automatically. There are many different file types that can be used for this, but they all work similarly. Coercing authentication by requesting that an element, such as the file icon, is loaded from a remote location. We will be using the NTLM theft tool to create these documents. If you're not using the attack box, you'll have to download the tooling first. On the attack box, we can find the tooling by running the following command in the terminal. Okay, so it's located over here in the attack box that we're using. So we need to copy this command here, and then we're going to go to the attack box in the other browser tab, and then we're going to open a terminal. So we can open a terminal by using this button, or this button. So I'm going to click this button, and that's going to open up a terminal, and then I'm going to make it nice and big so we can all see better. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then we're going to paste in the command from the TryHackMe webpage. So we can click into the terminal and then use the Control-Shift-V shortcut to paste in the command that we copied. Okay, so this command is going to take us to this particular directory right here. And if we look in the directory using the ls command, we see that the NTLM theft.py script is here. So let's learn more by looking to the web page about how to use it. Okay, for a specific example, we'll create an LNK file using the following command. So it's this Python command right here, which is going to run the NTLM theft script. We need to adjust this command here to make it work properly with our challenge. So we're going to copy this, and then we're going to go to our terminal, and we're going to paste in the command with Control-Shift-V. But you see here that there is this parameter here called attacker IP. We're going to need to replace this with our own IP for our attack box. So the attack box IP can be located at the top of the window in this section right here. It's going to be different for each one of you. So, but for me, it's this IP address right here. So remember to put in dots instead of dashes when we're inputting the IP address for our attack box machine. Okay, so we're going to run this command, and it says generation complete. Okay, so let's take a look at what we did in the web page. This command will create an LNK file in the stealthy directory named stealthy.lnk. With this file, we can now coerce authentication. Okay, so McCready much. We know that McCready is a little snoopy, so let's add the LNK file to our network share and hope he walks right into our trap. Use your favorite file editor, and you can inspect the LNK file that was created. Okay, so let's navigate to the stealthy directory, we need to, because that's the directory where the LNK file was created. So cd stealthy, and we can see that the stealthy.lnk file is here. We can just we can read the file by just using the cat command. Okay, so that's a whole lot of code. So we can't necessarily read what's going on, but we just need to trust that this this file is going to work the way it does, the way it's intended to, rather. Okay, so back to the web page. We will now add this file to the network file share to coerce authentication. We're going to connect to the network file share on this particular IP address, which corresponds with the IP address that we started for the virtual machine. This IP address is not going to be the same for everybody. It's going to be different for everybody, just to let you know. You can use SMB client to connect as shown below. Okay, so we can use this SMB client command right here to connect to the network file share as the user guessed. So we're going to copy this command, and then we're going to, I'm going to clear this screen because it's a bit messy. I'm going to paste in the command, and that's going to, so now we're inside of the network file share. If we use the dir command, we can see that there are a bunch of files and directories inside this file share, and there's this fun little file called greedykeys.txt. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to download that by using the get command inside of SMB. So get greedykeys.txt. We're going to execute that command, and that means that we're going to download the greedykeys text file. We don't know what it is yet, but it looks pretty tempting, doesn't it? Okay, so here it says that we're going to use the command put stealthy.lnk to put this file inside of the file share. All right, so let's do that. So we're going to paste this in. Whoops. We're going to put stealthy.lnk. And so that command uploads the stealthy.lnk file up to the network file share. And if we type dir, we see that the stealthy.lnk file is indeed in the network file share. Okay. The first command will connect you to the share as the guest. The second command will upload your file, and the third command will list all files for verification. Next, we need to run responder and listen for incoming authentication attempts. We can do this by running the following command from the terminal window. Okay, so this is the responder program. We're going to copy this, and inside of our terminal window, we're going to create a new terminal window by clicking on the shortcut again. And in this terminal window, I'm going to make this a little bigger. We're going to run the responder command. Okay, so we need to wait a little bit for this to collect the information. So let's go back to the TryHackMe webpage. Let's give McCready a couple of minutes. He might be taking a hot chocolate break right now, but we should hear back from him in less than 5 minutes. While we wait, we're going to use your connection to the network file share to download the key list. He left us a clue using getGreedyKeys.txt. So we've already done this. Once he authenticates, you will see the following in responder. So we're going to see an authentication attempt here, or some authentication information rather, as the administrator user. Okay, so let's go back to our attack box, and it hasn't come through yet. Okay, so let's read about this ahead of time. So now that we have the challenge, so after we get this, we can try to crack it to recover the new password. As mentioned before, the challenge was encrypted using the user's NTLM hash. This NTLM hash is derived from the user's password. Therefore, we can now perform a brute force attack on this challenge in order to recover the user's password. copy the contents of the NTLM SSP hash portion to a text file called hash.txt using your favorite editor and save it. Then use the following command to run John to crack the challenge. Okay, so let's take a look at the responder over here. It hasn't quite finished collecting the challenge yet. So we're gonna wait for a little bit. We're gonna go back to our other terminal window, and we're going to exit here. So exit. So as we can see, the greedykeys.txt file is here, and if we read it rather, so cat greedykeys, we see that it's a name of different passwords. So it could be any one of these. Okay, so responder hasn't received anything yet. Let me check to see if we performed the steps correctly. Okay, so the LNK file has to have our attacker IP attached to it. Let me check here. Okay, so the attack box IP for this is 10.10.169.112, 10.10.169.112, so that is correct. And then we uploaded the stealthy.lnk file to the network file share, and then we ran responder. Okay, so let me double check. Oh, okay. It looks like responder received the challenge. Great. So this is what we were waiting for. This is the NTLM v2 SSP hash that we need to crack in order to solve the challenge. So what we need to do is we need to copy this portion right here from administrator all the way down to the last 0 right here. And we're going to copy that using Shift-Control-C to copy. And then we're going to create a file called hash.txt in the other terminal window. So nano, we're going to use nano hash.txt. Okay, and inside this hash.txt file, we're going to paste in the contents of the NTLM hash. So inside of the window, Control-Shift-V. Okay, and that's going to be the contents of the NTLM hash. We save the file with Control-X, press Y, and then press Enter. Okay, so I'm going to clear the window, and then we're going to use John the Ripper, a password cracking program, to crack this hash. So the command with John the Ripper is this right here. So John the Ripper is a password cracking program. We have to supply a word list to it, which is the greedykeys.txt file that we downloaded from the network file share. And then we're going to crack against the hash contained in the hash.txt file. So copy that command. And then in the attack box terminal, paste in the command and run it. Okay, and we see that the John the Ripper program has cracked the password, and it is this right here. And so this is the password, and this is the name of the user. Okay. All right, after just a few seconds, you should receive the password. Magic, we have access again. Take back control by using the username and password to authenticate to the host via RDP. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to use the RDP program to log back into the server. Okay, so we're going to, from the attack box, we're going to log into the VM, the other VM, with the following command. Okay, so we're going to use I'm going to clear this. We're going to use the X free RDP program, X free RDP, and then /u : and then the username, which is administrator, and then /p for the password, /p : and it is greedy grabber 1 @, and then we need to do /v, and then the IP address of the machine that we want to log into. And for me, this is the IP address over here. You can copy this, and then we can paste it in. And then when we run this, we're going to log into the other server using the RDP program. Okay, so if it asks you if you want to trust the certificate, press yes. Okay, and we can see here that this is the desktop for the other server. And what we need to do is we need to collect the flag from the desktop over here. So here, there's on the desktop, there's a flag file. If we open it here, we see that the flag here is THM greedy not so great steely. Okay. Unfortunately, we can't really copy from here. So if we copy this, and then we go to a new terminal window, and we try to paste it in, it's not really going to work. Control-Shift-B. Yeah, that's not going to work. But if we just remember it. Okay, it's greedy not so great steely. All right, so we go back to the TryHackMe webpage, and we're going to put this in to the questions at the bottom, just so we don't forget. So it's THM, and then curly brackets, and then it is greedy.greedy.mick.not.so.great.steely. Okay, and then we're going to submit that as the answer. Okay, so we can so now that that's done, we can go to the conclusion for today's room. So what's a conclusion? Coercing authentication with files is an incredible technique to have in your red team arsenal. Since conventional responder intercepts are no longer working, this is a great way to continue intercepting authentication challenges. Plus, it goes even further. Using responder to poison requests such as LLMNR typically disrupts the normal use of network services, causing users to receive access denied messages. Using LNK files for coercing authentication means that we are not actually poisoning legitimate network services, but creating brand new ones. This lowers the chance of our actions being detected. Okay, so to finish off today's challenge, we need to answer a couple more questions. And the first question is, what is the name of the AD authentication protocol that makes use of tickets? So if you remember from studying Active Directory, the name of the service is called Kerberos. The next question is, what is the name of the AD authentication protocol that makes use of the NTLM hash? Okay, in this case, the answer is NTLM. The next question is, what is the name of the tool that can intercept these authentication challenges? Okay, so the tool that we used today to intercept authentication challenges was called Responder. What is the password that McCready set for the administrator account? So we got this answer when we cracked the NTLM hash, and the answer is greedy grabber 1 @ just like this. All right, and lastly, if you enjoyed this task, feel free to check out the Compromising Active Directory module. So we're just going to click on this to finish off the room. All right, if we want to be nice people, what we should do is inside of our RDP window, we're going to close out this text file. We're going to click on the start button over here, and then we're going to disconnect from RDP. We're going to close out all of our terminal windows, and we're going to terminate our virtual machine. And up at the top, we're going to show the split view and terminate the attack box with this button right here. All right, so everybody, that was day 20. That was day 23 of the Try Hack Me Advent of Cyber event. Only one more day to go. I'm very happy. I'm very excited at the thought of completing this event. Everybody, I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you had fun. But we'll be back tomorrow to finish the last day of Advent of Cyber 2023, and we will see you next time.